Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. In this video, I will break down the running back position for the Week 16 main slate. I've developed this chart for anyone who may be new to my channel, first time viewer or something. I just want to go over it real quick so you understand where we're at. And my returning viewers, I appreciate you being here, my subscribers. But real quickly, over here to the left, obviously, the players I have highlighted are the players that I'm most interested in, and I'll get into that as we go through the video. But real quick, green is the best for that category. Yellow is middle of the road, and red is the worst in comparison to that category. See, like McCaffrey here, if you come over to fantasy points per game, what their opponent allows is 21.2. Now that's in comparison for that category. Obviously, McCaffrey is one of the best backs in the NFL. That doesn't mean he's a bad back. Just this particular matchup, this category versus Indianapolis, they only give up 21.2 fantasy points per game to the running back position. So it's for that particular category. Obviously, I have the name, their team, their salary. Touches per game. This is carries and receptions. Fantasy points scored per game. This is how much fantasy points slash game is how many their opponent gives up to the running back position. This is their opponent's ranking in comparison to the rest of the NFL versus the running back position. This is their snap percentage for the last 4 games. For a while, it's doing it for the whole season, but you have to factor in injuries and missed games and things like that. So a snapshot of the last 4 games is more realistic, and so that's what this column is. And likewise, on the column beside it, and this is total red zone. This is carries and receptions in the red zone for the last 4 games. So I've changed those categories up a little bit, and I'm going to get right into this. I have a lot to say about this chart. At the end, I always encourage you to please drop any opinions or comments that you may have below, something that you might like to see, or see if I could add that might help you out. I will be doing my videos through the playoffs as well, so still have some time, and I just want to get some input, some things that you may like, or some things that you think could help, because I'm always open for suggestions. And I mentioned it in my last video, the quarterback video, and you'll probably hear it through all my videos this weekend. I sincerely want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, however you celebrate it, from my family to yours. And I really appreciate you taking the time to view my channel. So with that being said, let's get started. Christian McCaffrey. I'm worried about the value for McCaffrey this week. He's 10,100. I really like locking him in for the 30 fantasy points. Got back on track last week. Had a couple weeks where his scores were good, but when you take it in comparison to he was up to 11,000 at one point, and just to get 3 times value, you got to hit 30. And he's getting that. I mean, his average fantasy points per game is 31.2, so you're locking that in. There are some things this week. They're going to be starting Will Grier, rookie, I believe, from West Virginia, in his first NFL start. Let's hope that he still wants to check the ball down to Christian McCaffrey. See, when McCaffrey at 10,100, I don't think much about the price, because I feel like I'm getting 2 players for the price of 1. He's a running back and he's a wide receiver, and so you get two players for the price of 1. For him, that'd be $5,500 for 2 players, and I mean, he ran week 5 against Jacksonville. That was the turning point for me as far as with Christian McCaffrey. I decided that week, not that I was going to totally fade him out, but I thought I would be a little bit wiser than everyone else and be way under the projection or the ownership. And that's the week that he went off for 51 points. Now, McCaffrey also, this really doesn't have anything to do with daily fantasy sports, but he was my first overall pick this year. I rarely get to pick first in the season longs, and this year I only played in 2 season long contests. I just won the first one last week. Won the Ohio State Championship with Christian McCaffrey on my team, and I'm in the Super Bowl this week with Christian McCaffrey on my team. And I had such a hard choice at the beginning of the season between McCaffrey and Barkley, but he's pretty much single-handedly carried my team. So just wanted to get that pat on the back out of the way. But McCaffrey, I am a little bit worried about getting value with Grier. These teams aren't playing for anything, and all the numbers here. If you look at it, he's averaging 25.6 touches per game. He's scoring 31.2 fantasy points per game. Now Indianapolis has only given up 21.2 fantasy points per game, and that's a ranking of number 7 versus running back position. He's gotten 100% of the snaps in the last 4 games, and 24 red zone carries and receptions, more than anyone else. Those last 2 categories, more than anyone else on this slate. These teams aren't playing for anything. The coach is an interim coach for Carolina, so he's kind of playing for something. So let's hope they keep the pedal to the metal and keep McCaffrey out there. And these guys are basically just playing to be playing now at this point. So I will have a large share of McCaffrey. He's sitting at about 20% ownership the last I looked at the site that I use, which I'll probably go above that. I really do like locking in at 30 points. Even though Kyle Allen hasn't done great, I felt a little bit better with him in there because you don't know what you're going to get out of Grier. And so I do feel that McCaffrey will get his. He's over 53% of their offense, and I don't see them changing that in a week. Next up is Chris Carson. I got Carson in yellow because I'm just not sure. But at 8,500, I need 25 points out of him. Now, he's only averaging 17.7 fantasy points per game. He's only had 2 games this year over 27 points, which is about what we need at 8,500 for value. Just maybe 26, 27, but he's only had 2 games all year. Arizona has allowed 100.1 rushing yards per game in their last 9 games. Seattle does want to run the ball. That's what they want to do. Arizona runs fast pace, which creates more plays for the other team. He won't have to contend with sharing with Penny. So he checks off a lot of the boxes. He's a nice savings over McCaffrey. Seattle is playing for something, trying to keep that number 1 spot in the NFC. But I'm just concerned about. I don't like the price. That's what it comes down to. He's getting 21.9 touches per game. He's averaging 17.7 fantasy points per game. Arizona's given up 27.1 fantasy points per game to the running back position, which is a ranking of 23, so it's bottom 3rd. He's got 66% of the snaps the last 4 games and 8 red zone touches in the last 4 games. So I have some small shares of him. It's a situation similar to Lamar Jackson in the quarterback that was below him with Russell Wilson. There's a big gap there, so it's not like, well, if I get up to 8,500, I'll just go one up to 10,100. It's not that situation. In this case, I might be more likely to go down to the next running back that we're going to talk about, which is Saquon Barkley. Barkley is 8,300, which is a $1,000 jump from last week. He finally had a really good game. Washington is allowing 116.3 yards per game to the running back position in their last 9 games, which is 30th overall in the NFL. And he averages 26.4 fantasy points per game in the games that he has played versus Washington. This sets up for a really nice spot for Barkley. Jones is supposed to be back. I'm not sure that's so good because Manning did like to check down to his running backs and check down to the tight end. And Jones being the rookie, I kind of thought they were going to let Eli finish out the year, as he rides off into the sunset. But I like this price. It doesn't take. I mean, we're looking at 25 points to get value, and I do like Barkley more than I like Carson. He's a huge part of the offense. He's getting 20.3 touches per game. He's only averaging 17.1 fantasy points per game. But the Washington's given up 28.5 fantasy points per game to the running back position, which is 26 overall in the NFL. He's got 91% of the snaps. He doesn't share. He doesn't come off the field, similar to McCaffrey. He's matchup proof. It doesn't mean matter if they're win, lose, or draw. He's going to be out there. He's had 9 red zone carries and carries and touch receptions in the last 4 games. So if I get up there, I can see me going to Barkley more than going to Carson. I just like the matchup more and the volume. That's what I'm looking for in my running backs is volume. With my running backs, when I'm building lineups, I like to use 3 running backs, the 2 running backs with 1 in the flex. And between them 3 running backs, my goal is that they can get 70 touches between the 3 of them. And 70 touches, if you break down the touches per game by from the top 5 running backs each week, 70 touches or more gets you to where, above 9, gets you to 90 or more points if you average out fantasy points per touch. So that 90 points, representing a third of my lineup, is a good place to be when in GPP or any type of contest. So I will have some. I'll probably be higher than the field for Barkley. I have a lot of interest in him even in that price, even though they jacked him up $1,000 from last week. Ezekiel Elliott, he's averaged 30.93 fantasy points per game versus Philadelphia. 30 points. He had 30 points versus Philadelphia in the week 7 game this year, where they beat Philadelphia 37-10. And in that game, he had 22 carries, 111 yards, and 1 touchdown. So he's at 6 receptions and 36 yards, and that was in week 7. Now, last year in Philly, he had 19 carries for 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 receptions for 36 yards again, and that was last year in Philly. Dak Prescott, there's a lot of uncertainty about Dak and his shoulder and AC injury. A lot of even Ezekiel Elliott mentioned that he couldn't imagine having to throw a ball with that type of injury. So they might have to rely on Zeke a little bit more, and Dak might not be able to get the ball down the field as much. So this might be a game. I did look, and I seen one game Elliott had where he had 12 receptions against Philadelphia. That might be the type of game that they need out of him. 7,900. It doesn't take much for him to get value. If you look, he's getting 22.4 touches per game, 20.6 fantasy points per game. Now, Philadelphia only gives up 21.4 fantasy points per game to the running back position, which is a ranking of 8. Usually you want to move the ball through the air versus Philly. But I could see Zeke getting involved in this game through the pass game and check down a lot from Prescott. He's had 87% of the snaps in the last 4 games. Came out of that game last week, and Tony Pollard came in and got over 100 yards too against the Rams when they demolished the Rams. He's had 16 total red zone carries and receptions in the last 4 weeks. So I like teaming Barkley and Elliott up this week at those prices, and there's other places that you can spend down and get value. But I really like the volume that Elliott's getting as well. Next up is Fournette, another volume carry. Now, he's only had 3 touchdowns all year long, but he's getting targets this year. He's getting a lot of targets. He's getting 23.1 touches per game. He's scoring 18.3 fantasy points per game. Could you imagine what his fantasy points per game would be if he was scoring touchdowns? He's only had 3 for the year, but he's averaging 23.1 touches per game. Now, Jacksonville's playing the Atlanta Falcons. They only give up 23.9 fantasy points per game to the running back, which is a 13 overall, so a little bit better than halfway. He's gotten 92% of the snaps in the last 4 games with 14 red zone rushes and receptions combined. I really like Fournette. He's another running back. That's what I'm looking for with my running backs is volume. You can get there with volume. They're getting the passes, getting the carries. They're not in committees. And these three that I just talked about, I would love to be able to fit them in to some lineups and build around them. Next up is Joe Mixon. Now, Miami's allowing 112.7 yards per game in their last 9 games versus the running back position. Mixon has had at least 19 carries in his last 3 games. They've made a concerted effort to get him the ball. He's 6,600. I'm not super crazy about the price, but it doesn't take much for him to get there at that price. And his average of well, first let's look. He's getting 18.8 touches per game. He's only scoring 13.9 fantasy points per game, so we need him to get above his average. And it only takes 18, 19 points just to get low value. Here's the thing, though. Miami is giving up 29.4 fantasy points per game to the running back position, which is number 28 overall in NFL. He's getting 68% of the snaps. He's had 13 red zone carries and receptions in the last 4. I really like him. You do have Giovanni Bernard there, who gets a little bit of the third down work. These teams aren't playing for anything, so that's another scary thing as we get to that point of the season. There's a few more games this year that have more games that mean more. These 2 teams, Miami and that's wrong there, you guys. I apologize. That's not Cleveland. Obviously, that's Cincinnati. I'm going to change that. And obviously, they're not playing for anything other than pride. And but this could be a fun game. There's lots of pieces to it that you can stack, and I talked about that in my quarterback video with Fitzpatrick and Dalton. There's a lot of pieces of this game that I like, and I have a lot of interest in Mixon. They've been making an effort to get him the ball, and I like the volume, and he can do a lot with it, especially in this matchup. It looks like a really good matchup, and the thing to do most of the time this year is to play players against Miami. So this game might set up, and Fitzpatrick's throwing the ball around a lot. This game could go back and forth. It's a pick, and so they couldn't even pick a favorite in this game, and the game total is 47 points. Next up is Mac from Indianapolis. Mac is getting 19 touches per game. He's only averaging 12.7 fantasy points per game. Carolina is dead last versus the running back position. They're giving up 31 fantasy points per game to the running back position, which is a ranking of 32 overall. Now, he had some injuries, so this is why his snap percentage is low for the last 4. He's only gotten 20% of the snaps, and he doesn't catch many passes. They use Nyheim Hines for that. He's had 2 total red zone carries and receptions in the last 4, but again, that's because I believe his first week back was last week, or in limited fashion the week before. I like Mac. I just at that price, 6,200. I'm not sure. I think actually that the Indianapolis passing game will probably get T.Y. Hilton's expected back tomorrow. They're home. They have been eliminated. So not sure how much they will actually rely on Mac in this game. Again, this is a game that doesn't have any playoff implications. Both teams have been eliminated. But he's interesting, but he's got to get there on just carries or on yards and touch. You need him to get in the end zone at that 6,200. You got to get 100 yards and a touchdown out of him just to get the low value. So, because he's not going to catch many, if any, passes out of the backfield. But I wanted to put him in the player pool based on this matchup. He could really thrive in this. And if they get going on the ground, they just might resort to that and, pound it out. Next up is Freeman from Atlanta. I really like Freeman this week. Atlanta's allowing 117.2 yards per game in their last 9, which is 31st overall. Now, he's only averaging 16.8 touches per game, which is and 13.1 fantasy points per game. But Jacksonville is number 31 versus the running back position this year overall, and they're giving up 30.4 fantasy points per game to the running back. He's had 53% of the snaps, but and that's because he was banged up some too, and he's had 6 red zone carries and receptions. I have a lot of interest in Freeman. Now I do have an interest in the passing game, but I thought maybe it would be contrarian to go the Jacksonville passing game and flip it to maybe Atlanta with Freeman, and do it that way. A lot of people were probably, I do have a lot of interest in Matt Freeman. A lot of people were probably going to go Matt Ryan and the passing game and bring it back with Leonard Fournette. That'll be a popular stack. But what about going Minshew and the passing game and bringing it back with Freeman? That, kind of switching it up. And that's a GPP move. But I do like him. I like him at that price. He's not sharing carries. There's nobody else back there. They do like to get him the ball out of the backfield. And I wouldn't be afraid to stack the whole game with Ryan and Freeman and Julio and like just a big game stack and bring it back with pieces of Jacksonville in Fournette. And this game actually has a 46.5 point game total. So I like that. I like Freeman. I like him at that price. So I'll definitely have some shares of him. Next is Gordon for the Chargers, 5,600. It's not going to be too many times you see Melvin Gordon at this price. Austin Eckler has busted onto the scene. He's getting a lot of the action in the passing game and getting, well, if you look here, he's got 56% of the snaps and Gordon's getting 55. So it's a dead even split. Looks like they're on the field about 10% of the time together. He's averaged 22.8 fantasy points per game versus Oakland through his career. Now, he's only averaging 16.9 touches per game. He's averaging 14 fantasy points per game versus he's averaging 14 fantasy points per game. I'm sorry. And Oakland is giving up 25.9 fantasy points per game to the running back position, which is 20. So they're in right there at the bottom third. As I mentioned, he's getting 55% of the snaps, and he's had 9 total red zone carries and receptions. I generally stay away from running back committees, but I think he's going to be low owned. Could be really sneaky at home. They are a 6.5 point favorite. So I have a lot. They're not playing for anything. This is another team that's not playing for anything. But they might give it to him and not have to do much with Eckler. Like I say, Eckler gets a lot of work out of the backfield and through the passing game. But this is a running back that you can plug in, and you're going to get the touches. If they get down on the goal line, they do like to get him the ball, and it doesn't take much for him to pay off that 5,600 value, and 4 times is definitely reasonable. I mean, he's only averaging 14 fantasy points per game, but a couple touchdowns and 80 yards rushing, you're there at 4 times, and that's a good hit. Next up, Lindsey from Denver. Now, this is one of my favorite of the week. He'll probably be high owned because of his price, and a lot of people know about the matchup as well. Now, he's only 5,300 in a phenomenal matchup at home. He's getting 15.8 touches per game. He's only averaging 12.5 fantasy points per game. But Detroit is number 29 overall versus running back position. They're giving up 29.1 fantasy points per game to the running back. He's only getting 47% of the snaps because this other guy is getting the other 53%. So it's almost a dead even split, but he can do a lot with what he gets. He's had 9 red zone carries and receptions compared to 7 for Freeman. So they're pretty much 50-50. But at his price at 5,300, it doesn't take much. It's a really good matchup. They're at home, a rookie quarterback. They're playing against a rookie quarterback. To me, this just sets up really nice to have Lindsey and defense correlated and move on and build the rest of my lineups. I will have a large share of Philip Lindsey this week as one of my favorite running backs of the week because of the price and what I think you can get in value in this particular matchup. So, wrapping up my running back positions for week 16, and these are the ones that'll be on my player pool. And again, if you're not already a subscriber and you haven't hit that notification bell, I encourage you to do so. Tomorrow I'll be doing my um, lineup building video where I build lineups utilizing just the player pool that I've created in my videos, and then I use those players in an optimizer and I share that with you guys and show you how to put them together and correlate them and make some sense, because that's what it's all about, making sense, stacking, correlating, and putting it together like that. There's still time. If you haven't won, there's still time to win. I'll be with you through the playoffs, but and I'll get to that in a minute as far as becoming a subscriber and all that. But these are the running backs that I'm going to be targeting in week 16. Again, just a quick rundown. Again, use this chart how you like. These one over here are the ones that I'm targeting. If you like some of these others, use these numbers. The research is there for you. Use it how you like. Screenshot it. Stop the video. Write it down. Whatever you want to do with it. But I like Christian McCaffrey at the site that I use right now. He's at 20% ownership. Chris Carson, I'm on the fence with him. Not crazy about the price, but I do think he'll get some volume with Penny being out, and he's getting volume anyhow. And that's what they want to do, is run the ball. My problem with Carson is that I like Barkley more. Barkley's $200 cheaper. He's 12% ownership as well. Next is Ezekiel Elliott. He's sitting at 9% ownership. Leonard Fournette at 7% ownership. Joe Mixon from Cincinnati, 4% ownership. Mack from Indianapolis, 5% ownership. Devontae Freeman from Atlanta, 7% ownership. Gordon from the Chargers, 15% ownership, which I figured that because of his price. And Philip Lindsay from Denver, probably one of my favorite pick, if not my favorite pick as far as running backs this week, and is sitting at 9%. I want to thank you guys for joining me. It's good to be back this week. I had some issues last week and didn't get all my content out, and I missed it, and I'm back, and things are going a little bit better for my family, and I really appreciate all the nice comments and people reaching out to me and wishing well. I encourage you to please drop any opinions or comments that you may have below. I'm still working on this chart. If something you'd like to see me add that you think may help, or any other comments that you have, please drop them below. I try to get back to everybody. Please share this video, like it, subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when my next video posts. My subscribers have been going up, and I really appreciate it. My viewers have went way up, and if you're viewing it, I really appreciate it if you become a subscriber. It helps me out a ton. You don't have anything to lose. This is some good information, and it's free, and I really appreciate it. I'll be back shortly to post my wide receiver video for week 16, and then tomorrow we'll be doing tight end, defense, special teams, and the lineup building video, which is one of my favorites, where we put it all together. You can also follow me on Twitter at winningabout. My name is Ty Patton. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports, and I'll see you guys again real soon. Thank you.